I've been planning my video to share how I helped myself to read better at the age of 29 for the last 4 weeks, I think. And it's going nowhere. I tried scripting, I tried practicing with the video, I recorded on 2 separate days, tried editing, and it just felt very lengthy and formal and a little bit contrived, in my opinion. And I was thinking, what happens if I did it without any scripting and without trying to be concise? So here we are. The question that really came to me that helped me to try this out was, how can I make it easier for myself? And it feels almost like a cheat code. Like I shouldn't be able to want to make it easier for myself, because surely this is going to be a difficult thing for me, right? Because speaking in front of a camera is difficult, forming my thoughts is difficult, and then learning to read is difficult. But no, maybe that is just a myth that what is that word? Meritocracy might have ingrained in me. I don't always have to work so damn hard in order to get towards what I want, especially if it's something that really is from my lived experience. And I don't have to work so hard for something to be good enough for what I feel proud of. Yeah, so I thought let's do this. So the question for today is, how can I make this easier for myself? It can be applied to anything, right? Me making a video, me speaking, me sharing about experience, me compiling the books that I have here, um, by going to different libraries in Singapore, or even something that I was thinking about today. How can I make it easier for myself to... Clearly, I lost my train of thought, but I think I was just tracking back to the first thing I said, which was, how can I make it easier for me to set up my camera and set up my room in order to make a video? And how do we go about this? I don't know. I guess I can share my thought process for video making. Okay, so this is my home studio because I teach voice here and body mind awareness sessions. And it's also my bedroom, right? So that's the first thing. My physical environment has to change from how I live in it to how I would like to work in it or how I like to film in it. So that's the obstacle number one. And then number two is, I would like to have some continuity from videos. So how do I set up these little plushies here so that it looks somewhat similar, which is part of the physical environment. And then the third thing is also the lighting, right? Not always is there pretty nice lighting from my window, and not always does it feel appropriate to switch this on to create a more like warm feel. So how can I work with lighting and angles to help myself? And the fourth thing, sorry, is sound. So I'm lucky to have this Luck M2 microphone here that has decent enough noise cancellation, but occasionally when I'm staying, which is like HDBs in Singapore, right, there's like screaming or laughing or talking in the neighborhood. There might be drilling or knocking from my neighbors in the block, even just across the street, and then that might come into this. So just taking stock of all these things that I can try to control and then try to lessen my barrier to entry, so to speak, is going to make it easier for me as a whole to film. Now then, when we look at the actual filming process, oh, and also setting up the camera, that's number 5, right? So making sure that my tripod is always just around the corner so I can just grab it when I have the vibes for it. Yes, so that's 5 things. And then we talk about the filming itself, right? How do I check that the framing is okay? And then how do I get my mindset into a space where I feel okay speaking to a camera for more than 30 minutes on end? How I make it easier for myself in this regard is, firstly, I consider the difficulty of this task for me. This task is maybe like 6 to 8 out of 10 difficulty because it's a skill I'm consciously working on and I don't feel I'm so great at it, which means that I need to resource myself a little bit better. So number two, how do I resource myself better, right? This means that I rest and prioritize sleep the night before, and also make naps before, well, make space for naps before I film. And then number three, drink water, hydrate, because I am a living organism. I need to tend to that. And then 3.2 would be to eat sufficiently so that I don't feel like I am hungry and trying to fight in this situation because it is unfamiliar. Number four would be, let's think, is there even a number four? Number four is what I arrived at today, to just let my interest of the day lead me to film something rather than trying to stick to a schedule. Because for me, even though having regularity is important, but having to stick to a plan when in the day I don't feel up for it, that is something really, really, really horrible to bear. In fact, when I was thinking about filming a proper reading program video earlier today, my body was just trying to shut down and go into nap and sleeping mode. And it was only when I asked myself, how can I make it easier for myself, that it just changed my perspective. Okay, so there's like two things where I could apply this question to. And now looking back to the reading program, right? Back then, I don't think I consciously asked this to myself, but it was a combination of me having taught many people in voice and body mind awareness sessions that I've always approached it with, where is the person at right now? And then where do they want to get to? And what do they need in between to get them there? So we have a macro goal, and then we have a micro goal for just the day itself, like 1 hour session, or even within the first 5 minutes of a session. What is an achievable thing? So I think I just planted that into my own self. Like, what can I do for myself to be able to read fluently, right? I'm not gonna try to read a 300-page book right away. Let's make it really, really simple. Short sentences, maybe even pictures and beautiful things. So when I went to the Singapore Punggol Library with this micro goal, I thought, okay, let's start with children's books. And as I say this, part of me is like, did I really have to like de-age myself? Which goes back to what I said earlier in this video, right? Like, meritocratic and capitalistic ways of thinking has created a sense of leveling up that I didn't realize was so deeply intertwined with how I perceived whether or not something I was doing is okay. So when I was at that library, I really reckoned with myself, and I'm like, no shame. Let me just figure out how to look for children's books. So instead of asking the librarian, like, hey, how can I find children's book? I decided, let my interest guide me. I'm gonna start with topics that I'm interested in, which back then and currently are neurodivergence, psychosomatic wellness, and queerness and gender fluidity. Is there anything else? Actually, a couple more things. I'm also interested in learning how to live with chronic illness and disability in this modern world that we're in, because I have eczema and a couple of other things, as well as learn how to live a more meaningful and intentional life, which includes nurturing, nourishing relationships with people. Okay, back to the video. I think those are mostly it. Yeah. So there was this area that is called the accessible collection, where they had children's books in those topics. And then there was also one section, I can't remember what the section was called, but they had like identity exploration related things. So I found several books. The first one was How Are You, Verity? And I couldn't, well, I found the book at Woodlands instead of Punggol just this week. But I didn't like how it felt because it was a different version for the one I saw at Punggol. So here, this is the book, How Are You, Verity? Which is about a non-binary child who is reckoning with the phrase "How are you?" that people tend to ask in American cultures and also some westernized cultures. And that was the first book that I really sat with and slowly read. And then I also went into a section where I found this beautiful book called The Whale Who Swam Through Time, and letting my interest catch me by judging the book by its cover, something that probably your teachers or adults in your life said not to do when you were a child. Look at that. It's got this like shiny thing and it's got beautiful illustrations. I'm not sure it's painting. Um yeah. This I love this page especially. And then the third one, I don't know how I arrived at this, but this book called Still This Love Goes On, because I saw it by the spine and I was like, this is really pretty. And I took it out and turns out this storybook is based on the song by Buffy Saint Marie. So I could read this and listen to the song, which was such a great experience. Anyway, on the topic of how can I make it easier for myself to learn to read, I started with these picture books and I found a really nice corner in the library and gave myself like 3 to 4 hours to just sit with these books. That seems really generous, but I'm really glad that me of that time gave myself that luxury to just explore and not have a finish line to end up at. So I think this is my second point in the reading one. I lost track. Anyway, I'm gonna probably put some kind of caption so you can follow along. How else I made it easier for me was to just read this, not just to understand, but to immerse and experience the world that the authors and illustrators and whoever else collaborated on this was trying to gift to us as the reader. What I mean by that is that even though there are words, right? Like I would narrate it in my brain about 200 years ago, for example, right? But just taking as much time as I wanted to sit in this landscape of 200 years ago. How did it feel on my skin? What does it smell like? What does my feet feel like in this snow? If I were there with the polar bear, how would I feel? Or what would I be curious to do or be scared to do? And experiencing the vastness and emptiness of this quiet 200 years ago landscape before I moved on to the next page. I have no idea how long I spent on this book, but that shift of trying to understand and trying to fully grasp the words, this reframe helped me to experience the world of this book a lot better. Especially when I think later on there were like more words and it gets very intense. No spoilers here, so where is that page with a lot of words? Okay, let's say this, right? Yeah, just really taking time to let like the words sit with me and the onomatopoeic words sit with me. And that made it a lot easier because there was less pressure of how reading could be and a lot more invitation to explore how reading can feel good for me. Okay, is there anything else that I did on that visit? I shall pause the video and think. Okay, so quite poetically, pausing to think about what else I did back then reminded me that the third thing that helps me to read was to give myself pauses when it feels difficult to understand something, or when I feel tired, or when I feel like I'm losing my interest. It's okay to pause, it's okay to stop or even abandon ship. So even though these three books, these two and the one I couldn't borrow, I really read through them, but I think taking time between books to be like, okay, how did that feel for me? Do I need a toilet break? Do I want to take a walk before I continue? Really helped me. So really checking in with myself before engaging with the activity, since my goal was to be able to read and experience and understand more fully, then this was a way I could make it easier for me to achieve that micro goal. The fourth thing that helped me, that I only realized after I visited more libraries and bookshops and touched more paper, was that if the paper felt horrible, okay, these are all great because these are like matte. I don't know if you call it matte, but they're not like glossy and go like like some textbooks feel. So these, great. I would borrow them. This one also. This is another book that I borrowed later on. Beautiful matte pages. I took a photo of a glossy book that day, so I'll put it over here. This one, no video, no go. Okay. Even if it's beautiful, even if the story is compelling, no, I am not putting myself through sensory hell in order to read. And 4.2 would be that the text and the art style has to appeal to me immediately. This is somewhat related to the first one where I said like let my interest guide me, but this is more specific because then I really look at the font faces. Are they like very squished together? Does it feel like it's yelling at me? Does it feel like the font of the text and the art style are not like congruent or complementing each other? I don't think of this so consciously. It's really like a vibes thing. So tuning into these four things really helps me a lot. The last thing is, well, not a point form, but so that was how to make the reading process easier. So now we're talking about when I'm reading, what I can do, right? Much like what I did earlier when I evaluated how to make filming easier. So when reading, let's consider the physical environment. I meant to say sensory environment and not just physical environment, because sensory includes all of which I'm about to share. So sound, I need it to be either quiet or there can be noise, but it has to be like a very consistent noise. So for example, if you have a vacuum cleaner in the background, but it turns on and off every 10 seconds, oh my god, no, that's not happening, all right? But if it's droning along for like 5-10 minutes, I can get used to that. Or when it's storming outside, totally cool. So what I do to help with this is, let me go grab this. Is to use my loop earplugs. I use the quiet tool with additional mutes and just plug it in, and it really helps to dampen a lot of extra sounds in the environment, even at home, or especially at home because HDB areas can be very noisy. I realized while editing, I didn't include listening to music that helps me to sync and focus. So this would be like drony music, ambient things, and light guitar music. I'll link some of my playlists somewhere below or in my bio so you can take a look if you wanna. And physical environment stuff includes also temperature and the tactile sensation of sitting to read a book. So the chair I chose was very cute and beanie and it kind of like hugged me. I really like it. So making sure that I'm physically comfortable and making sure I have a fluffy jacket that I always bring around for comfort and emotional support. Sometimes visually there's a lot of light and it's too bright, so I have these clip-on shades. I also have another pair that has no degree. So that just helps me feel more sensorially like eased out. I can't ask the library to, hey, can you change the aircon and can you change the lighting or can you make things quieter or people can you all shut up so I can read. So what I can do is to change how I exist in that physical environment. I think that's plenty of things that has helped me to ease into reading. What has changed since I visited the library, I think in like June last year, so it's been almost a year now, is that I started reading some, what do they call it? Poetry prose books called Good Different by Meg Eden Kuyat. I hope I got their name right. And then also wandering into shorter writings in adult nonfiction, like this Moving Mountains one, which is a compilation of writing about nature through the lens of illness and disability. And also borrowing books that are more advanced and more academic and reading them in snippets rather than trying to finish like 10 pages at one go. So really using the 5 key points that I mentioned earlier and applying it to various levels of reading has made it easier for me to slowly get better at the pace of my body, mind, and at the capacity that best suits me right now, regardless of the biological age I'm at. Yeah. Okay, bonus thing that I think has really helped me to make reading easier was to prioritize dopamine hits, which is related to the interesting. But what I mean in this case is if I can finish even 2 sentences to celebrate that win and maybe even reflect on that so that it feels like I accomplished something. This is something I probably want to explore in a different video eventually, like how to celebrate little achievements and little discoveries in a way that society might not necessarily certify you for having done so. Okay, so we're at the end of the video, I think. There's probably 20 minutes right now. If you're here till the end, thanks for staying tuned. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any thoughts, feedback, any experiences that you have had that might be similar, or any suggestions on how to make things easier, things to consider. That's all. Wow. Very weird to have been talking really based on interest. I hope as I edit this, it's not going to be too harrowing. Okay, goodbye. And this is a plushie that me and my really close friend call Hamster.